We spend so much of our lives trying to control what was never meant to be controlled, as if existence itself is waiting for our approval. But what if the life you're struggling to manage is actually the life that has been carrying you all along? What if seriousness is not strength, but just fear wearing a responsible face? And in that moment you realize you were never meant to hold it all together, only to experience it while it unfolds. We rehearse conversations that never happen. We stress over roles we think we must play, and we live as if life is some stage where perfection is required. But what if it's not a performance at all? What if everything you wear, everything you achieve, every identity you build is just like a costume in a vast masquerade? Beautiful, yes, but still just a costume. And beneath all of it, there is simply you. Imagine being at a grand masquerade ball. Everyone is dressed up, wearing masks, playing their part. You could spend the entire night worrying about how convincing your mask looks. Or you could simply join the dance, laugh, move, interact, forget about being right or perfect for a while. And in that moment of letting go, something real is revealed. Not because the mask disappears, but because you stop being trapped inside it. So many of us treat life like something that needs to be controlled, analyzed, perfected. We think if we can just hold everything tightly enough, nothing will go wrong. But life doesn't respond to control the way we imagine. The more tightly we grip it, the more it slips through our fingers. And when we finally loosen our hold, we realize it was never something we needed to imprison in the first place. Sometimes I find it almost funny how seriously we treat this whole experience of being alive. We move through our days like we're working in some invisible office of the universe, checking off tasks, chasing goals, trying to attach meaning to every passing moment as if someone is going to review our performance in the end. But there is no final judge watching from above, no ultimate authority scoring how well we did. It's just you here, living through the confusion, trying so hard to justify something that never actually needed justification in the first place. Life isn't really something to be solved. It's something to be experienced. The more you try to turn it into a serious project, the more you miss what it actually is. It was never meant to feel like an exam. It's more like a strange, unpredictable performance where we are both the actors and the audience. And yet, we're often the only beings who feel uncomfortable just existing as we are. Look at nature. A bird doesn't question whether it's living correctly. A tree doesn't compare itself to another tree standing beside it. Everything simply is. But humans carry this constant pressure, this quiet burden of needing to prove something. It's a bit like holding a soap bubble. You can try with all your care to protect it, but the nature of a bubble is to eventually burst. And when it does, nothing is actually lost except the illusion you were holding. The space remains, the air remains, only the form has changed. Life works in the same way. Relationships shift, plans change, identities evolve, situations come and go. Everything you cling to will eventually transform. But the awareness in which all of this happens, that part of you doesn't disappear with it. It simply continues untouched. Children understand this in a way adults often forget. When children play, they completely immerse themselves in the moment. They become whatever the game requires them to be without hesitation. One moment they are warriors, the next they are explorers, and a moment later they are laughing again as if nothing was ever serious to begin with. They don't confuse the game with reality. They enjoy it while it lasts, then move on without resistance. As we grow older, we start taking everything far too seriously. We begin measuring ourselves constantly, comparing our progress, worrying about outcomes, trying to secure every possible future. We think that constant tension will somehow protect us from loss or failure. But in reality, it only pulls us out of the present moment, draining the life from what is already here. There is a strange freedom in noticing how absurd daily life actually is. Waking up, going through routines, speaking words, reacting to events, building stories in our minds. It's all happening in such an ordinary yet mysterious flow. When you observe it without judgment, something softens. You stop being fully caught in it and start seeing it with a kind of gentle humor. Meaning itself doesn't need to be forced or solved like a puzzle. It's not something hidden that must be uncovered through struggle. It's more like music. You don't analyze music to feel it, you experience it. But you can't fully experience it if you're too tense, too rigid, too afraid to let go. When you walk through life with a little more ease, a little less control, something surprising happens. The weight you didn't even realize you were carrying begins to lighten. You become more open to moments as they are, instead of how you think they should be.
People often look serious, stressed, and lost in thought, as if they are constantly rehearsing life instead of actually living it.
But you always have the option to step out of that inner pressure. You can drop the constant need to manage everything and simply observe life unfolding. And in that simple shift, something changes. Life doesn't become more complicated or more perfect, it just becomes more real. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is smile at how seriously you take everything. Because in that moment of laughter, something inside you loosens. Not the kind of laughter that mocks or escapes reality, but the deep kind that quietly says, I was carrying this weight for no reason. And suddenly, it all feels lighter. Even your confusion, your regrets, your endless desires, they start to look like part of a bigger, almost humorous unfolding of life. I once heard someone say, I take my responsibilities very seriously. And that makes sense. But there's an important distinction. You can be committed without being heavy.
You can care deeply, work with dedication, love with intensity, and still understand that life itself is not a rigid burden. It's more like a flowing experience. Seriousness is not the same as sincerity. In fact, sincerity often has warmth, softness, even a quiet joy inside it. The most grounded people are not the ones who look tense or burdened, but the ones who seem to carry a subtle lightness, as if they've understood something important and decided not to fight life anymore.
When you stop taking life too seriously, you don't become irresponsible. You become free. And freedom is very different from neglect. Neglect ignores life. Freedom engages with it fully, but without fear controlling every action. If you observe your own thoughts closely, you'll notice how constant they are. Do more, fix this, be better, prove yourself. The mind is always pushing, always trying to shape you into something else. But behind those thoughts, there is something silent that simply observes them coming and going. That silent awareness is you, and that part of you is untouched by all the noise. No matter how chaotic the mental story becomes, that deeper presence remains calm and unchanged. It's almost like being the audience in a theater. The play on stage can be dramatic, emotional, even overwhelming, but the audience itself is never harmed by it. When you realize you are that awareness watching the experience rather than being trapped inside it, something shifts. Life becomes less like a struggle and more like a performance you are free to witness and participate in. This doesn't mean you withdraw from life or stop caring. In fact, the opposite happens. When you are no longer desperate about outcomes, you can actually engage more fully. Your actions become less driven by fear and more guided by curiosity. There is space to breathe inside everything you do. Think of an artist painting without pressure. If they are obsessed with creating something perfect, every movement becomes tight and restricted. But when they simply enjoy the act of painting, something flows through them. The work becomes alive. Life is very similar. When you release the need to control every outcome, you begin to move with life instead of against it. The universe is not demanding perfection from you, it is inviting participation. And when you stop resisting its natural flow, you begin to notice a quiet harmony underneath everything. A sense that you are not separate from life, but part of its movement. Laughter, ease, spontaneity, these are not achievements. They are what remain when resistance drops away. Peace is not something you build, it's something you allow. So let yourself be lighter.
Let your existence carry a softness, not as denial of reality, but as recognition that this entire experience is both incredibly strange and deeply beautiful at the same time. There is a kind of cosmic irony in being human. It's as if life is expressing itself through us while also laughing at how seriously we try to understand it. And the moment you begin to see that humor, something inside relaxes. You start noticing how much effort it takes to maintain the identity you think you are. The image, the expectations, the pressure, it all requires constant energy. And when you finally pause, even slightly, you realize how exhausting it has been to hold all of that together. And in that pause, something unexpected happens: relief.
It becomes clear that life was never really dependent on your control. It continued on its own, flowing, moving, unfolding, even when you were not trying so hard to manage it. Just like a river doesn't stop when someone tries to hold it, life doesn't pause for our approval or supervision. We often believe we are the ones making life happen, but if you look closely, everything is already happening. Breathing is happening. Thoughts arise on their own. The body functions without instruction. Even awareness itself is simply present. So much of existence is already given, already unfolding effortlessly. And yet we still ask ourselves if we are doing it correctly, as if there is some hidden rule book we might fail to follow. It's a bit like waves in the ocean worrying about whether they are waving properly. The question itself becomes the joke. This seriousness we carry is not wrong. It comes from a sincere place.
We want to do well, to live meaningfully, to not waste our lives, but over time, that sincere intention turns into pressure. We forget that we were never meant to earn the right to exist. We were never placed here on probation.
A child doesn't question whether they are allowed to play. They simply play. And in that simple action, they are fully alive. Somewhere along the way, adults begin waiting for permission to relax, to be themselves, to enjoy life without guilt. But that permission was never needed. The truth is, you are already part of life, not outside it, not trying to qualify for it, but already included in it. The moment you recognize that, something softens. You stop striving to be accepted by existence and realize you already are. Existence itself is an invitation, but the moment we start taking it too seriously, we turn something vast and beautiful into a heavy obligation. We begin behaving like administrators of our own lives, constantly judging every experience, labeling it as success or failure, as if we are keeping records for some invisible authority. But life was never meant to be organized like a spreadsheet.
It doesn't move in straight lines or fixed formulas. It unfolds in curves, surprises, and spirals. The moments that truly shape us are rarely the ones we plan. They arrive in the most unexpected ways. A lost item leads to a new encounter. A mistake opens a door we didn't know existed.
A sudden laugh breaks through tears we thought would last forever. Nothing important ever really follows our script. And that's the beauty of it. When you stop treating life like a serious project, you begin to notice how artistic it actually is. There is a strange harmony in the way chaos and order exist together, how joy and loss keep exchanging places, how comedy and tragedy are constantly intertwined. It's almost like a cosmic performance where everything is being balanced in motion. And you are not outside of it, you are part of the rhythm itself. Yes, you will stumble sometimes, that's inevitable. But even stumbling is part of the movement. Imagine a performance where nothing ever goes wrong, where every line is perfect and every step is flawless. It would be lifeless. What makes anything meaningful is its unpredictability, its vulnerability, its openness to error. That's what makes it real. That's what makes you real.
So when things don't go as expected, don't rush to punish yourself. Just smile a little. You are improvising like everyone else. Life is not a rehearsed script. It is unfolding in real time. And the universe, in its own strange way, seems to appreciate improvisation more than perfection. This is something we often forget when we become too serious. Each of us is improvising through existence. There is no fixed manual, no final version of how life is supposed to be lived. It's more like a live music session. You come in, listen to what is already happening, and add your own rhythm. Some moments will feel off, others will feel deeply in sync. But in the end, It all becomes part of the music.
And once you see life like this, the line between ordinary and sacred starts to disappear. Everything becomes meaningful in its own quiet way. The sound of footsteps on a wet road, the smell of morning coffee, the silence between two people who don't know what to say, all of it carries something alive within it simply because it is fleeting. Don't fall into the idea that enlightenment or understanding is something distant or special. It isn't hidden in complicated ideas or spiritual performances. It is right here, in the most ordinary moments. In the way your thoughts wander, in the way you suddenly realize how serious you've become, and then, without reason, you laugh. That simple laughter is already a kind of awakening, because in that instant, all the weight drops. In that moment, the idea of me becomes less solid. The effort to control everything disappears, even if only briefly, and what remains is just life, moving freely on its own.
A common fear arises here. If I stop being serious, will I stop being responsible? But seriousness is not the same as responsibility. Seriousness is often rooted in fear.
True responsibility is something else entirely. It comes from care, from connection, from love. When you truly care about something, you don't act out of pressure. You act naturally. You water a plant not because you are forcing yourself to be responsible, but because you enjoy seeing it grow. You take care of people not because you are afraid of failing, but because it feels like a natural expression of who you are. Love doesn't feel heavy, it feels alive. So let seriousness fall away. Let yourself move with life instead of against it. When joy appears, allow it. When sadness comes, don't reject it either. Both are part of the same flow. Even sorrow has its own strange beauty when you stop resisting it. Life never asks you to be perfect. It only asks you to participate, fully, openly, and honestly. There is a quiet wisdom in taking yourself lightly, not in a careless way, but in a free and graceful way.
As if your existence is not a burden to carry, but a moment to experience. What would it feel like to live like that? To stop constantly trying to become something else, and instead simply be here as you are, temporary, changing, alive in this moment. When you begin to feel that, something inside you relaxes.
You start to trust life a little more. You realize there is a deeper intelligence moving through everything, something that already knows how to grow seeds into trees, how to turn chaos into order, how to keep the universe in motion without your constant control. And in that trust there is peace. A quiet humor begins to appear too. You start to see your own struggles with a softer eye. Even mistakes begin to feel less like failures and more like part of a larger unfolding. At that point, life stops feeling like something you must win or prove. You can simply live it, work without pressure, love without possession, face uncertainty without fear of it. And when seriousness finally loosens its grip, something remarkable happens. You find yourself back at the center of everything, not as someone trying to control life, but as someone moving with it, where joy and sadness, gain and loss, beginnings and endings all exist together in one continuous rhythm. If you pay attention, you might even sense it, the quiet laughter of existence itself. It is not loud, it is subtle. It shows up in small moments, in unexpected peace, in sudden clarity. It seems to say, everything is already okay. And in that realization, you understand something very simple. You were never truly lost. You were never behind. You were always already here. What we're really circling around here is a shift in perspective, from living life as something you have to constantly manage to recognizing it as something that is already happening on its own. Most of our tension comes from the idea that we are supposed to be in control all the time, that we must hold everything together, prevent mistakes, secure outcomes, and keep improving ourselves endlessly. But when you look closely, a lot of life has never been under that level of control in the first place. Your heartbeat doesn't ask permission. Your thoughts don't wait for approval before appearing. Even your emotions rise and fall according to conditions you didn't consciously design. So much of what you call you is already unfolding naturally. The struggle begins when the mind steps in and says, I should be directing all of this perfectly. That's where seriousness grows. It creates a kind of inner pressure, like you are always being tested. You start treating moments as if they are permanent verdicts on your worth. A small mistake becomes a story about your identity. A delay becomes proof of failure. A quiet moment becomes something you feel guilty about. Life stops being experienced and starts being evaluated. But when you step back a little from that pattern, something interesting becomes visible. Most of what you were stressed about was not actually happening in the present. It was happening in thought, in imagination, in anticipation. The mind constantly travels into future scenarios or past reinterpretations, and in doing so, it drains the simplicity of what is right here. The present moment is never actually heavy on its own. It becomes heavy when it is interpreted through layers of what this means about me or what this could lead to. Without those stories, the moment is often just simple. You are walking, breathing, listening, speaking, existing. The weight is added later by thinking. This is why laughter has such a powerful effect in this context. Not forced laughter, but the kind that arrives when you suddenly see the absurdity of how seriously you were holding something. In that instant, the mental structure collapses a little. You realize you were treating a temporary situation like it was a permanent identity. That recognition creates space, and in that space, ease returns. Life itself doesn't seem to operate with the same urgency that the mind does. It is constantly adjusting, changing, repairing, dissolving, and recreating itself. Nothing stays fixed. Even what feels like a major problem eventually shifts into something else. This doesn't mean problems don't matter. It means they are not as solid as they appear while you are inside them. A helpful way to understand this is to see experience like weather. Thoughts, emotions, situations, they all pass through like conditions in the sky. Some are clear, some are stormy, some are uncertain. But none of them define the sky itself. The sky doesn't become less of a sky because of clouds passing through it. In the same way, awareness is not reduced by whatever is happening in it. When you stop identifying completely with every mental event, you begin to notice a quiet background presence that is always there. It's not loud or dramatic. It doesn't demand attention, but it is steady. From that place, life feels less like something you are trapped inside and more like something you are witnessing and participating in at the same time. This changes how you act. Instead of reacting from pressure or fear, you start responding with more clarity. You still care, but the care is not anxious. You still aim to do things well, but the effort is not driven by self-judgment. There is more space between what happens and how you interpret it. Even failure starts to lose its sharpness. It becomes feedback instead of identity. Something that happened, not something that defines you. And because of that, you become more willing to try, to explore, to engage without the constant fear of collapse behind every action. There is also a deeper irony here. The more you try to force life into control, the more restricted and tense it becomes. But the more you allow it to move naturally, the more effective and fluid your actions become. It's not that you stop caring, it's that you stop interfering with life's natural intelligence through constant overthinking. At the core of this understanding is a simple realization. You are not separate from life trying to manage it from the outside. You are life expressing itself in a particular form. Breathing is happening through you. Thinking is happening through you. Even the desire to understand all of this is part of the same movement. When that is felt even briefly, the need to constantly prove or defend your existence softens. You are no longer trying to earn your place in reality. You are already part of it, already included in it, already participating whether you try or not. Life was never asking you to master it, only to meet it fully in each passing moment. The weight you carried was mostly the illusion of control, not the truth of your existence. When that illusion softens, what remains is something simpler, lighter, and far more real. You are not here to prove yourself to life. You are here to live it, breathe it, and let it move through you with quiet trust.